Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another round Bases Picks. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. It's appreciated. There are 3 cards on worth talking about for this weekend. 2 of them are actually on tonight simultaneously, so they're both on the zone. You're going to have to choose which one you want us to tune into, but we're going to talk about those. Then we're going to jump over to the PBC on Prime card taking place tomorrow night. What area is that going to be taking? I'm not even sure. I think it's on the west coast of the states, but yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later on in the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, but for right now, let's get into the picks. So the Golden Boy Promotions card is headlined by Darius Fulghum versus Bektemir Melikuziev. There's a couple of other interesting fighters on the undercard. I won't really speak to the matches as such, but what's his name? Pacheco, not Diego Pacheco, his brother. What is his name? Federico Pacheco Jr. He's fighting on the undercard. Interest, look, 8-0, 6 KOs. Heavyweight prospect, 21 years old, 6'5", so similar height to Diego Pacheco. But yeah, I've seen him in the few bouts I've seen him in. Obviously, he hasn't been in there with any killers or anything like that, but he's got very good fundamentals for a heavyweight. Not really fast on his feet, but good solid defense, good hand speed combinations, and he looks like he does carry some power as well. So he definitely could be something to look forward to and to look out for 2, 3, 4 years from now, once he's got into that sort of mature body. But yeah, guess we'll wait and see. Also on the card, I know Eric Priest is facing Luis Arias, which I think will be a very interesting fight. Arias definitely has fought at the higher level of the two. He's sort of more towards the back end of his career, but he's definitely the sort of gatekeeper that can unlock big fights, big opportunities for you. Now, Eric Priest, 15-0, 8 KOs. He's definitely, fundamentally pretty sound. He's quite a aggressive fighter as well, so he's not someone that's going to be on the back foot, sort of looking to pot shot all over the place. He will come to try and get the KO. He doesn't have that elite level power as such, but he's got enough whereby if he can get you buzzed, he can probably get to you later on in the fight. But yeah, I expect Priest to do quite well. I expect him to sort of come through this one with not too much, maybe a couple tests here and there, but not too much problems. But the main event, Darius Fulghum versus Bektemir Melikuziev at the super middleweight division. Now, Fulghum is 14-0 at this point with 12 KOs, so he's definitely on the ascendancy. He's on that cusp of sort of getting or fighting for world titles, or at least fighting for the eliminator. So I believe this fight is an eliminator for the WBA. He's been looking for that opportunity. He's got it now. He hasn't faced any, big names, but he's Alantes Fox, Vaughn Alexander, just frequent names that I guess people would hear. But this is definitely his step up. And on the other side, you've got Bektemir Melikuziev, who has actually fought the much better opposition, but he seems to almost like he's plateaued a little bit. He doesn't seem to have risen, especially since that Gabe Rosado KO. Everything seems like it's sort of stagnated a little bit with him. So this could be the kick that he needs. I actually think that Melikuziev is going to do a lot in this fight. I feel that Fulgham's going to be under the cosh quite a bit in this fight. But I do think that Fulghum, especially the fact that he, speaks English, and that shouldn't matter, but I think all of that is basically they're gonna try to use this as a stepping stone. So I do see him actually coming away with the victory, even though I think if you watch the fight, you might be a little contentious of who's really won. but I think that Darius Fulgham's going to win the fight. I think he'll get a points decision, and I reckon they'll probably make it unanimous. And then Melikuziev, I guess he's just got to try and rebuild and work his way into another opportunity, maybe away from Golden Boy, who knows. But yeah, that's what I think of that card. Now let's move over to the Matrium card taking place in Mexico. Okay, so look, Matrium card, there's a lot of Mexican talent on there, it being in Mexico, so I don't know all of the opponents, I don't know all of the participants that are on there. Adrian Curiel is on there. If you guys know, he did knock out Sivanati Nonshinga in I guess a bit of a it was definitely a surprise, being the fact he didn't necessarily have a big knockout ratio. Nonshinga came back to knock him out in the rematch to get his belt back, and he's sort of been playing he's kind of been playing sort of the background ever since then. So he's facing Johan Rubio, who I don't know anything about, but I would assume that, look, this will be a fight for him to sort of get himself back up the ladder, back up the chain. So I'm going to assume Curiel wins that one and wins it quite comfortably. There's Christian Medina Jimenez, I think. He's taking on Juan Ramirez, I think his name is. Again, don't know these two, can't really give a prediction, but I guess if you judge on BoxRec, Jimenez is ranked number 18 and Ramirez is ranked number 167, so for whatever that may mean, who knows. Gabriel Goyas Valenzuela is taking on Manuel Medina Barrera. This is just basically a fight for him to come back after the Subriel Matias defeat that he suffered. I think he's still actually technically suspended in Puerto Rico, so he's not able to fight over there. However, this is in Mexico, no problems. I see him coming through this fight quite comfortably. I do see a stoppage victory, especially towards maybe between round 6 to 8. Only because the levels of the two, who they fought, I think is just, I think they're quite far apart in terms of their abilities. I do expect Barrera to be game, to be tough, but ultimately I see Goyas Venezuela, doing his thing. Right, you got MJ Akhmadaliev against Luis Castillo. Look, this is just a run out for MJ before the Naoya Inoue fight. Now, yes, Castillo will come to fight. He's not going to try to lay down. He's going to give it everything he's got. But if MJ is what he's supposed to be, this is literally just a run out. This is a tune up. Even if you take your eye off the ball, this isn't supposed to be a difficult fight. So I do expect MJ to get him out of there, and I expect it to be pretty early, between rounds 4 to 6. Now, main event, Manuel Gallegos against Khalil Coe 2. The first fight was a shocker to me. We all saw Gallegos get KO'd at 168 by Diego Pacheco. Went up to 175, wasn't even a big 175. And, for the first couple rounds, Khalil Coe was giving him the business. And it was looking like an easy fight. It was looking like he would have stopped Gallegos had it have carried on in that same vein. But after 3 rounds, I think Khalil Coe almost felt a bit disrespected that Gallegos was still trying to come forward and walk him down and said, all right, I'm going to stand in the pocket and trade with you. He got caught a couple of times in the pocket, and I think getting caught, especially the body shots that he took at the time, showed up the lack of preparation that he had put into the camp, and he basically just started to fall apart at the seams from that round 3-4 onwards. He got dropped on several occasions, but he did get up. He did try to carry on. He did try to fight back. He even won a couple. I think he even won 1 or 2 of the rounds after the first or the second time he got dropped. But when it came to sort of that third time, the referee threw in. The referee decided to call it off. He looked defeated. He looked like, even though he would have got back up and tried to go again, like there was no fight left in him, the ref decided to wave it off. He suffered his first career loss after suffering a shock draw earlier on in his career, but then, he came back and rebounded. But the problem with Khalil Coe at the moment, for what it seems like to me, is as talented as he is, as highly decorated and as much of a prospect as I expect him to be, he seems to get into a rhythm where he will win a couple of fights and then he feels like he's on easy street, then he coasts, then he has some form of setback, the first one being the draw, then he tightens up again, goes back through, starts to look spectacular, but then starts to maybe believe his own hype again, and then we get what we got last time against Gallegos. So there's definitely a mentality thing in there that I think needs to be looked at. But he has obviously made several changes from his pro debut up until now. He looks like he's making the weight better than he was previously. He came in at 173 pounds, the same as Gallegos for this fight. So he's not even one of the biggest 175ers. At one point he was toying with the idea of moving down to super middle. He probably can't make super middle, but the fact that he's kind of in between there should give him some room to play with when it comes to road work, when it comes to getting bigger, and ultimately when it comes to making sure that he's got those energy reserves later on in the fight. Now, I do think that Gallegos is going to be full of pep, full of beans in this one. He's going to have that Mexican crowd carrying him on, but I do think when it comes to Coe in this second fight, based off of what I've seen him do previously, I think he's going to take more of a safety first approach. He's going to box more like he did in the first 2 rounds and try not to get in a war with Gallegos until later on. I think he's going to be able to be successful with that, at least for sort of the first 4 to 5. The conditioning, I have to assume, is better than it was last time, and Gallegos, I think, is going to pressure him. He's going to test that gas tank. And if Khalil Coe hasn't, if he has cut corners, if he hasn't been honest about what he's been doing in the gym, he will get found out again, and that may be the end of him. But I don't think that's going to happen. Personally, I do think he's going to win this fight. I think he will win the fight via a close unanimous decision. I don't think he's going to be able to get Gallegos out of there, because I don't think he's going to stand and trade with him enough to really sort of let the hands go. And to make that his MO. I think he's going to try to box safety first, get those demons out from the previous fight, and then basically move on from there up the ladder. So that's my prediction. I do think he'll win, and I think it will be unanimous decision, but he's going to get tested, and quite frankly, we need to see if the big stepper is really still there. Okay, so moving on to the PBC card that will be taking place on Prime on Saturday night. There's a lot of, I guess, also runs on this card. If we're going to be honest, this isn't one of their pay-per-view offerings, which means that all of their quote-unquote top stars are not there, apart from the 2 towards the top of the card. And again, they're not there in fights that are, I guess, that anticipated or that requested, hence they would have been pay-per-view based on the PBC model. That being said, Kamel Moten is going to be on the card. Obviously, we'll sort of know about Kamel and his trajectory. If he can, stay the course and do what he needs to do, he's still going to be an interesting prospect. I think he's only just, 18 now? I think he's still very young. So what is he, 8-0, 7 KOs? No, 7-0 with 6 KOs, sorry. So this will be his 8th fight. It'll be interesting to see sort of how he, how he gets on. Also, my fighter to watch on this card is Yoeli Hernandez, who's going to be taking on Kyron Davis at middleweight. 6'2", Cuban, about 27 years old, hits very hard. He's from that Cuban school, but he's from that new school, Cuban school. Very aggressive on the front foot, looking to land those power punches, looking to come around the side. 7-0, 7 KOs, so you know what he's after. Kyron Davis is a fairly big middleweight, to be fair. He was an undersized super middle when he fought David Benavidez, but at middleweight he will be, much bigger. And I think his frame is a little bit stockier personally than Hernandez, but I just think Kyron Davis, his chin has been exposed before. He leaves openings when he's trying to set his shots and then reset his feet, and I think someone like Hernandez will see those openings and ultimately will take advantage. I see him winning this fight. I see him winning the fight via KO, and I do see it being around the 6th to the 7th round, somewhere in between there. Looking at the two sort of co-main events, you've got Jamal Charlo versus Thomas Cornflake LaMata. Look, I'm not going to give you any tactical breakdowns. Like, LaMata is what he is. He's 39-5-1, so a lot of experience, but you know, never done it at the top level, never been able to, you know. And then you obviously got Jamal Charlo, former WBC middleweight champion, or now I think he might be champion in recess, so he could probably go fight for that belt again if he wants. But he's now gone up to super middle for this fight. I don't think he's going to take too many chances. Technically, fundamentally, Jamal Charlo is a very fundamentally sound guy. He's probably better fundamentally than Jamel is, but Jamel's a bit more spiteful. I see Jamal basically controlling the fight fairly comfortably, even being out of the ring as long as he has. First couple of rounds might be a bit testy, but the timing I think will come back ultimately, and I see him winning a very straightforward unanimous decision victory. I think it's a 10-rounder. I think we're gonna be looking at 7-3, 8-2, that kind of scenario. Moving on to the main event, I guess, which is Caleb Plant versus Jose Resendiz. I've seen a little bit of Resendiz, obviously, but he's like 15-2. Caleb Plant's like 23-2, so clearly got the more the more experience of the pro, more experience as an amateur, former world champion. Resendiz hasn't been at that level. I think Caleb Plant basically, again, controls this one, and he's not going to be just on the back foot trying to, you know, sort of trying to be that slick mover on the outside, jabbing and moving, because since he's moving with Breadman Edwards, he's been more content to try and stay in the pocket a bit more, stand his ground and push his opponents back. And I think there's going to be something very similar like that with Resendiz. I think in those first couple of rounds he's going to try to impose himself while keeping just far enough away to be able to avoid any big counters that Resendiz is trying to put over the top. But ultimately, I think when it just comes down to it, Caleb Plant is just going to be too much. Now, I'm going to conservatively go with a unanimous decision victory because Resendiz is fairly tough. He's never been KO'd. He's been KO'd once before, but he was KO'd by someone who I believe is a much harder puncher than Caleb Plant is. There is an opportunity, maybe Caleb could get a late stoppage, but conservatively I'm going to go with a unanimous decision victory, which therefore sets up the Caleb Plant versus Jamal Charlo pay-per-view that you know we're going to get around October, November time on Prime. So that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Leave your comments and your predictions in the comments box down below, and any others that come across that you want me to chat about, we'll do it. But until then, thank you very much for watching. That's Basis Picks. Locked.